Hi, and welcome to this edition of Business Supes, where we interview successful business owners, learn a little bit about them, their business, and of course, their business superpower. Today, I am joined by Mark Abels, who is the owner of Selco and Belair Time Corporation. Mark, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. So, why don't we start off, have you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business? What's your origin story?
So Selco is an almost 90-year-old business. I am third generation owner. Came out of the jewelry industry. My grandfather was a immigrant. He opened what we assume is kind of a Depression era pawn shop in 1935, and over the years turned it into fine jewelry for people from the Oklahoma area. It was actually based out of Oklahoma City, but we had stores all over the Southeast and Southwest. My dad came into the company in 1962, took over in 1975. He wasn't a big fan of the jewelry industry, and we had this small division that he thought started around 1960, but I found registrations online where Bruce G. Weber, who is my cousin, and a lot of people in the Tulsa area know who he is, but he was actually my dad's predecessor running the company. His dad was my grandfather's partner. But Bruce had registered Selco Incentive Corp in around 1957. So around that time, we started dabbling in recognition, incentive, we had a lot of product in the jewelry store that worked well in corporate recognition programs, such as crystal or watches or bracelets, really could be anything in the store. My dad really saw watches as the sweet spot in that, and he really enjoyed that industry. They got involved in the promotional products industry. So in 1980, he sold all the jewelry stores to Zales, and at that time, they went from about 400 employees, to about 8. A lot of them went to Zales, and others, went other places. But as a kid, it just was always exciting going up to the office, seeing what they did, going into the jewelry stores. So I was about 10 at the time my dad sold it, and I was just stunned. I mean, he sold my business. He sold my future. He sold, the idea of, now there's 8 people and there was 400, really changed my vision. I had a couple cousins who had similar dreams, and my brother and sister, we were all very interested in it, and it just seemingly disappeared. And for my cousins, it definitely disappeared because,
Right.
my dad owned it 100%. So, but I, kept going up there. As I got older, I worked a lot in the company and did different things, and got to go to shows, and really found that he was on the right track. The promotional products industry was an amazing, fun, growing, changing industry. In the 80s, it was very, very entrepreneurial. It has changed a lot and grown. It's gotten very sophisticated. But back then it was, the relationships were amazing. The jewelry industry is tough. Go into a mall and see how many stores there are, and see how many people are in those stores. So I think he really saw a good future. Meanwhile, we were the leaders. We were the first ones in this industry doing what we were doing, which was customizing watches. He brought clocks in the early 80s, and he really fell in love with that side of it, including being a clock manufacturer. So I came into the company in 93. I was not supposed to really come in until about 95, but he was getting to the point where he really wanted help, and he wanted to work less. So he brought me in a little quicker than I was supposed to. So my plan was to do everything. I had already, as growing up, done a lot of different things, been to shows, worked in customer service, worked in accounting, worked in production. So the next steps were working in purchasing, working in sales. I was involved in every manager meeting, every bank meeting, I was just those early years. I was, and the thing is, I had to be the first one in and the last one out. So put in a lot of hours to really learn it and understand it. The goal was for me to take over in 2000. Actually became operations manager in 98, where my dad and I more or less took over the day to day in 98. We didn't talk about business. He had a home in Florida. He went to Florida, and we didn't talk about business for about 3 months, and just did our thing the best we could. And so a little trial by fire, but I'd been around, I'd been there for 5 years at that point. So, and then over the next, I'd say 12 years, my dad just did less and less. For years, people would say the word entrepreneur to me, and I really felt like I'm a boss's son. I didn't really, come in and take anything. I didn't create anything. I didn't, it was there. I think my entrepreneurial experience started in about 2008 with the Great Recession. My dad came in and said in 2007, things are about to get ugly and we need to get ahead of it. And I don't know what he knew that the rest of us didn't, but he was right on and probably saved the company. Just because being a watch company in 2008, after the iPhone had come out, and in that environment, it was tough. So we made some quick moves. We were on a pretty solid foundation. And then I started making some decisions. I'm sitting here facing, do I want to bring in, my clock inventory's turning. I just looked at it and I thought, we're kind of a Me Too clock company. We're all the same. It was really easy for me to go out and sell watches and tell everybody why we were better and different. But on the clock side, there just wasn't a lot of differentiation. So I got us out of the clock business, made an acquisition in 2010 that really changed who we were. And that was kind of the moment it really became my company and my vision. He was always there, helped me a lot through the acquisition. He would have never made it without me, because it was some former employees who I had history with, but it was more, they had been around since really I was born. So they left in 90, but I really put that relationship back together and made the acquisition go. So that's really when I put my stamp on the company and really felt like for the first time that, this is mine. It doesn't really look like my dad's company. Obviously, my dad could say it didn't look like my grandfather's company long before, but so that was kind of, I don't want to say the beginning of my journey, but that's when I really felt like this is mine. This is, got my stamp all over it. And so, and that's been
cool. So you said, I'm sorry. You said customizing watches is really the basis of the business. So what does that look like? Is that like large companies? Is that individuals reaching out? How does that process work?
It is mostly corporate. So the way we go to market is through promotional products distributors. So that could be, the people who come in and sell you your printed pins, your printed mugs, your, bags, things like that. We tend to work with distributors who are more recognition and incentive based. So they sell recognition programs, which could be a 5, 10, 15 years of service. It could be sales awards, could be retirement. So those are the type of areas we traditionally sell into. We definitely do promotions where it could be a low priced watch that goes into a golf bag for a golf tournament or something like that. So across the board, but the real strength of our business is that recognition. We also deal with recognition companies, companies that are built really for recognition programs.
Mm.
They do less promotional, more recognition. Um, we also deal with a few watch companies where we do their customization. I say a few, it's more than a few, but so that's part of the business that really came out of just all the capabilities we developed. And then in 2020, we bought Belair, which is private label watches mainly for independent jewelers. So an independent jeweler wants to have their own watch brand. They come to us, we put their logo on the face of the watch, and you go into their store and they're going to have 20, 30, 40 watches in the case with their name on it. So it gives them a brand, it builds their brand, builds their image. Helps with returning customers because they get that watch, and very high quality, all stainless steel, Swiss movements, sapphire glass. So really good quality. So they're proud to put their name on it and, help build their brand and repeat customers.
Right. That's really cool. So what's the coolest watch you guys have created, do you think?
Um, we had a program for, I'd say about 8 years where NFL would come to us and we would develop a Pro Bowl watch each year. It was
Wow.
always different. It was 100% custom. And it was really interesting because normally the quantity wasn't big enough for a custom job like that. Because I mean, the case was custom, the strap was custom, and they would just go out to the market and pick a lot of designs they like, and we would just make something,
Hmm.
based on what was popular, what they liked. As you can imagine, always very large because
Right.
NFL players. Um, that was a lot of fun, just developing that and knowing who was going to wear that. And we've had some really cool things with NFL. For Super Bowl 50, they did the 50 best players of all time. Steve Largent was one
Mhm.
of them. He got a watch. He walks in here one day and he goes, I never knew you were here. Don't know anything about you, but I get this watch at the Super Bowl, and I pull it out, and it says you're here. So he brings it in to have it sized, and
Wow.
so that was very cool. So and even this year, one of the players who won one of the Pro Bowl, um, uh, they're doing those different little
Mhm.
skills challenges.
Right.
So he got online on Monday and registered his watch. And I looked at it because all of them come across my desk. I just, normally don't pay a lot of attention to them, but I was like, wait a minute, because we were watching that skills challenge. So, a lot of cool NFL things. They don't. So the difference now is they don't do the total custom watch for the Pro Bowl, but they're still doing Pro Bowl watches. So, I mean, we do Super Bowl watch. So that's, I don't know, just such, my dad's biggest thing was he did some watches for Cher, and they were, I'm not exactly sure what the deal is. He would have told the story much better than I did, but one day Cher gives him a call and says, Larry, how are my watches coming? And so he had a
Wow.
picture, autograph picture. She sent it in after she got the watches. The logo on the watches was a tattoo that was on her cheek, this cheek, not that cheek. So I mean, that was his favorite story.
That's really, really cool. So you said that you guys are different from everybody else out there. What makes you different?
Our focus has always been customizing domestically. So in the 90s, the watch category exploded. So my dad really took it to scale in the 80s, and people started to notice. So a lot of companies came after us, a lot of overseas production. So that really took over the market and kind of hit us pretty hard. Um, but by 2000, .com bust, all that, they were having issues in overseas in Hong Kong and China, and I think 97, 98. And it got really difficult over there. But we always had this commitment to producing domestically and getting better. So in the early 90s, we started manufacturing watch dials. We were the first ones to bring in digital printing. Um, we buy laser engravers. Went through a lot of different generations of engraving for case backs and buckles and things like that. With our dial producing capability, we did a lot of different things, just adding things, capabilities to the market that you would have had to go overseas and buy 500 to get it done.
Wow.
So, through the different markets and, like the .com bust, the Great Recession, things like that, having that local domestic capability brought a lot of things to us. We also, that's why we picked up other watch brands, because they could go overseas for the big things, but they needed somebody who had a full range of capabilities to produce their domestic orders. And it's not worth them shopping different orders. They need one go-to who can do everything. That really positioned us well. Also with recognition companies, same thing. And then in 2018 or so, we got an opportunity to do university watches on Fanatics in other bookstores.
Oh, wow.
Fanatics requirement was 5-day turnaround time, which, and these are one-off orders. So you get on, you order your OSU watch, during football season, or say for a gift for your son or something, and we got 5 days to do it. So these are Fossil Bulova Citizen watches. Just gave us the capability. When we first looked at it, we thought, I don't think we can do this. And we just sat down and figured it out, and just gave us opportunities that, I don't think anybody else could have done that 5-day turnaround, especially at the
That's
scale
impressive. I'll ask you the question that started this whole thing off. What would you say your business superpower is?
Solving those kinds of problems. And when I say those kinds of problems, how do we do it in 5 days? I understand the process from beginning to end, from getting the order to getting it out and getting it in the customer's hands. So when those challenges, issues, problems come along, I just, my skill is to get in and solve that problem. And it was a really good complement to my dad's skills, which were, my dad was a salesman. He was a very good businessman at the top level. He was a salesman. He ran a large company for a while. It was publicly traded, so he really understood process and procedure. So my ability to get in the weeds with his ability to see things from 10, 20,000 feet worked very well together. Unfortunately, I didn't get the sales benefit out of him that I would have liked, because he just got to the point where more and more he didn't mind going and doing shows, but he wouldn't do the sales work and that kind of stuff. For years, we worked very well together, because we were just in different places in the organization and had very complementary but different skills.
That's awesome. That's always nice to have people who can kind of play off of each other's strengths. So it's really cool. So, all right, last question. What piece of advice or nugget would you have to share with other business owners?
Keep your opportunities open, build relationships, look for chances to do things with those relationships. I mean, I just look at how we got to where we are, and most of it is, we just had these relationships out there that when it came time for companies to make changes, some of it was acquisitions where we just had those relationships. We were fair business partners, and when it came time to move on, we were a natural for them, a comfortable fit, maybe not always the best price for
Mhm.
them, but they knew that they were going to get paid, and things would go along. Where we've picked up watch companies to do their decoration, just relationships and doing business the right way for a lot of years. One thing my dad kind of taught me is, float these things from time to time, when you have these relationships.
Mhm.
Let them know that if they ever decide to sell or move on, that you're there for them, or remind them how you can help
Mhm.
them. So a lot of these watch companies where we picked up their business, we were customers, and we were very good about reminding them that, hey, if doing those processes yourself doesn't fit anymore, we're here for you. We're a little bit of a competitor, but I
Mhm.
mean, they've put great trust into us, and given us large books of business, and we don't look at the customers' names, we just take care of our partners. So I'm always looking for opportunities. I'm always talking, and trying to see where we can take this next, because as I said, almost 90-year-old company, you don't survive that long by being who you were yesterday. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just not possible. Obviously, we could not be a Depression era pawn shop today.
Right.
Just wouldn't work. So you've just got to keep figuring out who you are. And, I think companies kind of get bogged down in, well, this is who we are and who we have to be.
Mhm.
You got your vision, values, things like that. So you can stay loyal to that, but let the business evolve. And
Yep, no, and that's some great advice, Mark. So thanks so much for taking some time to hang out with us today and share your business superpower. It's been great to talk with you.
all right, thank you. Great talking to you too.
You're very welcome.